There are four levels of making money. Most people spend their entire lives stuck at one level, and that is level one. Working harder, getting tired, praying for breakthrough, fasting, and not realizing that God never designs them to only labor. He designed them to reign. Today, I want to show you the four stages of wealth from labor to legacy. And the four stages of making money from labor to legacy simply reflect both natural principles of value and kingdom principles of dominion. Let's walk through them. The first one is implementation. That is the labor level. And then we move on to unification or the management level. Then we have the third level, which is communication, the influence level. And the fourth level is the imagination level or the creation level. So let's break down the implementation level or the labor level. This is simply called the doers. They trade their time for money. These are people who work with their hands and physical effort. And don't get me wrong, everybody can start at this level. For example, we have cleaners, drivers, some CNAs, and even some nurses, cashiers, factory workers. They work hard every day. But here is the reality. Their income is limited by time and energy, and they earn the least, often between 20 and 30,000 a year, and can even go up to about, let's say, 80,000 or so in a year. At this level, if they stop working, the money also stops. If they stop working, the money stops coming in. So let's look at the kingdom reflection for this level. Jesus said, the laborer is worthy of his wages. Luke chapter 10, verse 7. But listen carefully, child of God. Labor is honorable, but it was never meant to be your final destination. It is the starting point, not the throne. I want you to take note of that. The next level is unification or the management level. Managers, they organize the doers. And at this level, you are no longer just working with your hands. You are now organizing people who work with their hands. Team leaders, for example, supervisors, managers. That's what they do. They don't do all the work, they coordinate the work. And because of this, their income increases to about, let's say, $40,000 to maybe 80,000, or it can even go up to about 150,000, depending on the industry. It depends on the industry. Well, what's the kingdom insight for us here? If you look at when Jethro visited Moses, that's Moses' father-in-law, he said to Moses, you cannot do everything alone, Moses. You need to delegate some of this work to trusted elders in Israel. And that can be found in Exodus chapter 18. The moment Moses moved from doing everything to organizing others, his impact multiplied. Leadership increases value. In other words, the third level of money making is communication. We can call it the influence level. Here you use your words to create wealth. This is very powerful, child of God. At this level, money is no longer tied to your hands. It is tied to your voice. For example, speakers, coaches, authors, influencers, YouTubers, many of them fall under this category. They get paid because they can persuade people, they can teach people, they can inspire people, and they shift mindsets. Here, income can jump to about, let's say, from about 100,000 to 500,000 and even millions. Why not? Because one message can reach thousands. One message can reach millions of people. And that's how you make your money. So, what's the kingdom inside right here, child of God? Jesus never built wealth with his hands, he built influence with his words. The Bible makes us to understand everywhere Jesus went, people followed him. Why? Because he had an impact that he created with his voice. He could shift people's mindsets. People saw what they had never seen. Let's look at the Apostle Paul. Paul wrote letters, and those words still shape the world today. Communication multiplies impact. Come to think of it, that testimony you have, what are you doing with it, child of God? Put it out there. There are people who need it. Communication takes you to another level, especially when it's inspired by the Holy Spirit. Last level is imagination, the creation level. And here, creators build systems and intellectual property. How does this work? This is the highest level of wealth creation. At this level, you don't just work, no. You don't just manage, you don't just speak, you create. You could create courses, for example, books, software, businesses, systems, movements. So now it takes another dimension. You build something that can produce income even when you are sleeping. Here, child of God, income is unlimited. This is the kingdom blueprint. Genesis chapter 1 shows us something powerful. God imagined, then he spoke, then he created. You were made in his image, child of God, which means you were not just created to labor. No, you were not. You were created to imagine, to build, and to multiply. Let me tell you something today. There is nothing wrong with working hard. No. But there is something wrong with staying stuck. When God has called you to build, why should you stay stuck? No. And the kingdom mindset shifts you from working harder to working wiser. In the kingdom, your words, your ideas, your obedience are all forms of currency. You were not born just to survive. You were born to reign. If this message blessed you, child of God, type in the comments, I was born to reign. And share this with someone who needs to break out of survival mode. God gave you the power to create wealth. Rise from labor to legacy. Your voice, your ideas, your obedience are all currency. Thank you. Bye bye.